is keep awake and alert. Gata for the sound of the bell.
body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment, benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoga Vairocana Maha Mudra Manipadma Jabala Pravartaya
Please stand and come forward for the chanting of the three refuges and afterwards their recitation in English. Jishim Quimyon Ne Shivam Samse Chemam Chale Samju Ilche Jishim Quimyon Ne Shivam Samse Chemam Chale Samju Ilche Dhammapada And please repeat the English after me. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate the teachings.
I will cultivate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Please return now for another shorter period of meditation, about 5 minutes. And during that time, our Dharma teacher, Hai Yun, I will change places with her and she'll sit because she's going to be offering a Dharma talk this morning.
Please follow along with me for some gentle stretching exercises. Good morning, everyone. I'm Hayun, and Haju Sunim and Ma'um decided it was time for me to get into the batter's box again. And so here I am. Here we are. I'm going to start with a reading from the Dhammapada today, the chapter on violence. Violence. All beings tremble before violence. All fear death. All love life. See yourself in others. Then whom can you hurt? What harm can you do? He who seeks happiness by hurting those who seek happiness will never find happiness. For your brother is like you. He wants to be happy. Never harm him. And when you leave this life, you too will find happiness. So I have been contemplating lately my own tendency to become restless and worry. I don't think I could talk to you about things that don't seem real to me. It would not seem from the heart. And so today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about restlessness and worry. When the pandemic started in March, I had this strange sense of peace. The pieces seemed to be pulling together. We flew my parents home. I was sheltering with them. They're both in their 80s. My family was around the corner, so I could see them every day. We had sorted out things at the temple so that those who needed to be isolated and quarantined could be so. So I had, even though things were falling apart everywhere, I had this sense of peace that the people in my life that I cared about were safe. The one exception being Jen Wenzel, who is our intrepid landscape magician. She is an EMS worker, but I knew if anyone could keep themselves safe, it was her. So I had this sense of peace. And what I observed as we moved through the pandemic and all of the events that have ensued since then is my peace sort of turned to restlessness and worry. Little things. And there were things that were actually valid to worry about. While I was staying with my parents, my mom fell and broke her arm and couldn't even go to the hospital because we were in the pandemic. My kids 3 times have tried to take the SATs, and 3 times they've been canceled. So there are things to worry about, but also I started really worrying about the state of our nation and world, which has always been there, but it seems to have come to the forefront. And so I found myself kind of descending into a ball of worry. And so I really wanted to look at what the Buddha and Buddha's teachings had to say about this, because I feel like I'm not unique. We all have our own pandemic stories. We all have our own stories of frustration and pain about what's happening in our nation and our world. And so I thought I would take a look at the scriptures and see what on earth they might have to say to us at this time when we're going through so much in our lives. So I discovered something called the Five Hindrances. You know, we're full of lists in Buddhism. We have a lot of lists, and Osen even put together a list of lists for us. But this is a particularly important list, I think. It sort of stems from the 3 poisons. And the 3 poisons, greed, anger, and delusion, are really broad categories. So what I like about the 5 hindrances is they sort of drill down a little bit and they go into the human condition that all of us have together. So I'm going to hold up a little paper that I designed with the 5 hindrances. And here they are from Buddhist scriptures. I guess I could have done a beautiful PowerPoint, but what would have been the fun of that when I could do a great little piece of paper. So the first hindrance that the Buddha discusses is desire/greed. And you notice that a lot of these have slashes in them because they're very tied together. And in Buddhism, we don't talk about just one kind of desire. When we think of the word desire and greed, we think about greed with money. We think about desire with food or sex. But in Buddhism, we also talk about desire of the mind. When you think of things like achievement or our striving for success, whatever our idea of what the world thinks is success, that kind of striving and craving is also a kind of desire. So it's really 2 parts. It's body and mind. The second hindrance is ill will and aversion. So this can range from everything from a minor irritation like, you folded my clothes wrong or something, to full-blown anger and hatred. And this can be an incredibly difficult hindrance to work with. It can actually almost be overwhelming at times. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor. And, we're all so busy in our lives that oftentimes we don't think of this one really affecting us. But I think we have to drill down beneath the surface because it has to do with our, lack of wanting to focus. It has to do with laziness and its consequences. And I think that when we look at sometimes how we look at our work or our relationships, that sometimes this can be sort of an insidious kind of hindrance that can get in our way of really being truly present with our work or relationships or other situations in our lives. The fourth hindrance, which I want to get into more today, is restlessness and worry. This encompasses both the sense that that our thoughts are taking us to somewhere that, we want an event outcome. We want to, how can I find a solution to these problems that are so unworkable in my life? How can I really get there? How can I do this? Combined with this sense of how all the past events in my life influence my present moment negatively, and how what I'm doing now could negatively impact the future. So you can see how this can take us into multiple places of negativity. And we'll talk more about it in a little bit. The fifth hindrance is uncertainty and doubt. In our Zen tradition, we have a really positive kind of doubt, which is the constant questioning, like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? It can really drive our practice energy in a really positive way. But there's also an undermining doubt that we can fall into. And the undermining doubts, things like that, can range from, is my meditation working at all? Why am I even doing this? To, is Buddhism really working for me at all? Why am I doing this? But it also can have an insidious component of our own self-esteem. Like, I'm not really good enough. I could never do this. I'll never get there, and really putting ourselves down in our lives and in our practice. So that's how that can be a really negative component. So there's a lot to unpack with each of these hindrances. And I think that one is not, it's not like you can point to one and say, this is my hindrance. I think that they all affect us. And, there might be one that we feel at a certain point in our lives is more prominent. But it's really important to see this not as negative character traits. So it's not like Hayun is prone to worry and it's a negative character trait, but it's that Hayun's worrying now a lot. And so that is part of the human condition. So the Buddha had a lot to say about that. And I wanted to share with you some of what he talked about. And because it was part of the human condition 2,600 years ago, he talked about it a lot, these hindrances, and they're in a number of sutras. One that I really love has some beautiful images, and it's called the Sangharavo Sutra. And for those of you who are scholars, it's from the Samyutta Nikaya. So the Buddha talked about us looking at our lives, looking at our practice as a container that's filled with water. And obviously, this is a precious container, and the water is clear. We can see to the bottom clearly. We can actually see our own reflection in the water. And that's what the pure, still mind gives us. The Buddha said that when our minds are filled with desire, though, it's as if that beautiful container of clear water is filled with dyes and chemicals. So we can't see the bottom, we can't see clearly, and we certainly can't see our reflection when that's the case. He then went on to say that if you are filled with ill will or aversion or anger, that it's like your container, your precious container of water is boiling over. It's like not only boiling, but it's going all over the pot. And there's obviously no way at that point that you can see clearly or that you could see your reflection in it. So when the Buddha talked about sloth and torpor, he said to imagine that your container is of pure still water is covered over with slime and algae. Obviously, at that point, there's no way for you to see clearly, and there's no way to see your reflection. And then when the Buddha got to restlessness and torpor, he said, think of your container, your precious container of clear, still water that is being blown by the wind to the point where it's just turgid. There's waves, it's going all over the place. Obviously, again, no way to see your reflection or to see clearly. And finally, with undermining doubt, he said, imagine your precious container is not only turgid, the water is blowing, but that both the container and you are in total darkness. So not only can't you see your reflection, you can't see anything. So I really felt like that was a really nice way to frame these hindrances. Because it not only portrays it in a way that we can understand it, but it also gives us a sense that it's something that we can change, that there is a way to get to that pure, still water, that it doesn't always have to be turgid or slimy or chemical ridden, that we actually can go to that pure place through our practice. So today I wanted to drill down a little bit more on restlessness and worry, to take that as a hindrance, because there's no way we could, in this Dharma talk about, give justice to all of them. So I wanted to just make clear from the get-go that I'm not talking about anxiety disorders now. There are very serious medical conditions that people may have, and those do require therapy. They sometimes require medical attention. And so this is not about that. This is about the anxiety and worry and restlessness that we all experience on a day-to-day basis, and how to sort of look that in the eye and make peace with it in our lives. I heard a story from a Shaolin monk, which I really loved, about restlessness and worry. He compared it to a monk, not a monk, just a man who was living at the base of this mountain. It was a beautiful mountain, and for his whole life, his dream was to go up that mountain and reach the mountaintop. But he was worried. So he talked to a lot of people about it who had been up the mountain. He met one man and he said, "How was your trip up the mountain?" And the man said, "It was good, but it was hard. It was really hard on me. It took a lot of energy." And he got even more worried. And then he talked to someone else. So, "How was your trip up the mountain?" And the man said, "It was good. It was nice. I'm not sure it was worth the effort, but it was really, nice. It was a good thing to do. I took it off my bucket list, and that was that." So he said, "Do I really want to go up this mountain?" And then he just kept talking to this succession of people who have been up the mountain. And the more he talked to people, the more he just became kind of worried about it. And he just decided, it's not worth it to me. I'm not going up this mountain. And I thought that was a pretty powerful story, because it shows how worry can really undercut us and undermine us, that he never saw the top of that mountain just because he was so worried about getting there, when plenty of other people had made it up. So the Pali words, getting back to scripture, the Pali words for restlessness and worry are uddhacca kukucca. And they are together, and they're really not separated, because what we find is that restlessness and worry really create a cycle, that it's something that I guess you could pull them apart, but usually they're connected in a big way. Literally what Uddhacca Kukucca means is when the mind is searching endlessly for solutions to our problems or relief from our suffering. I'm going to say that again. When the mind is searching endlessly for solutions to our problems or relief from our suffering. So let me give you 2 examples in my life of Uddhacca Kukucca and how they are combined, restlessness and worry. I, am very restless about being able to operate my life as I used to, or some semblance of how I used to. At morning practice today, Jajak came, and I haven't seen her for months, and I really wanted to just give her a hug, but I couldn't because of the pandemic. So I'm restless about when things might change for us. But that can morph into worry so easily for me. It's like, will it ever change? How will it ever change? And it gets kind of, you feel kind of despair at some point when you look at our situation. So that's an example of restlessness and worry sort of really weaving together. Another, obviously, is my sincere heart desire for there to be social change in this country, for there to be justice for people who have been treated so badly for so long, for their pain to be alleviated, and for our nation to move forward. And so I get restless. I wish the election were today. I wish that we could solve these problems. And I get kind of worried because I'm like, what if we can't solve? And I get into this cycle. And so it's not as if these things aren't concerns. They're genuine concerns. But when we allow them to create this sort of knotted ball of worry, we're not in a place to create change or to help others to do so. And so that's what I mean. It's really a cycle. And it becomes very compelling for us to be in this cycle and listen to all the news we can and do all the things we can and sometimes even let our practice slide because we're so worried. And so that's really what the Buddha is getting at when he talks about this being a hindrance for us. So I'm going to break down the Pali words for you. I don't want to get too nerdy, but I have another little paper. And so this is Uddhacca, which is restlessness, and this is Kukucca, which is worry. So with Uddhacca, restlessness, what the Buddha said is that this is mentally grasping after things that might bring us satisfaction. Not necessarily will, but it might. So we grasp after it constantly. One example of how this, an image of this is the monkey story, monkey mind. We all think of monkey mind as sort of when we can't settle down in our practice. But if we expand that, imagine a monkey in a total jungle forest. And there are leaves and limbs everywhere, and every single leaf is a thought. And he gets so lost in those thoughts that he can't see the sky, he can't see the ground, he can't see the other side of the forest. So that's what Uddhacca can do to us sometimes, is get us kind of wound up in that monkey place. And Kukucca is worry, which can also be regret or remorse. It's pretty powerful, and it involves all of our past actions, how they impact us today, and it goes also to the heart of us worrying about the things we do today having a negative impact on tomorrow. So you can see how they are connected and how they leave us in a state where it's really, really hard to settle down. So what are we to do with all this? I've given you a lot of information, but what does the Buddha say, and what do our Buddhist teachers say about how we get ourselves out of this knotted ball? And there are two specific places that the Buddha leads us to. The first thing that I think is important to mention that's kind of struck me is that the Buddha did not say you can overcome these hindrances, because he knows it's part of our condition as human beings, and always has been and always will be as long as humans are on this earth. What he said is you can abandon these hindrances, which leaves it more fluid. It's not like they won't come back, but that we'll be in a better place to deal with them when they do come back, because they'll always emerge again. It's just a matter of where we are in facing them when they do emerge. So the first thing the Buddha said was to really examine the source of our restlessness and worry, looking at it when it arises. Try not to get swept away in the current of it, but to step back and recognize that this is happening. Like, oh my gosh, here I go again. I'm starting to really worry about these things. It's really important to, when you step back, you can look at it without judgment, without saying, oh, Hayun, here you go again. How could you do this? You've been meditating for so many years. How could you possibly let yourself get wound up in this? And that's where the self-esteem game comes in. But when you're just examining, you're in a better position to just look at it as it is, without judgment. In fact, I talked to Pagu yesterday, and she said that it's not only about not judging it, but honoring it in a way and saying, you know what? I understand why you're feeling this way, or why I'm feeling this way. So I'm just looking at it. The Buddhist teacher Domyo Burke gave this image of if you're like a bird watcher and you're watching a bird in a tree, you see a bird, you pick up your binoculars, you're trying to find the bird in the tree, and then you find it, and you're just quietly looking at it. And you're looking at the bird's feathers, you're looking at its wings, its neck, its beak. You're not saying good bird, bad bird. You're looking at it as its totality is what it is. And that, I think, is what the Buddha's urging us to do when he said to examine it. And he said, don't skim over this part, because this really leads us to a very important part of taking the I or the me out of it. Like, I'm feeling this way. If you're examining it, it's that this is happening, like the bird in the tree. It's like the bird is there. And what am I going to do? And how am I analyzing this bird? The second piece of what the Buddha says that we should do is to redirect our thoughts. I know what you're thinking. That's really easier said than done sometimes when we're caught up in that tangled ball. But there are some things we can do that are really, really powerful that can help us get out of this cycle. The first is meditation, and sitting meditation is very important. Sometimes when we're agitated, and restless, it's hard to sit, but it's a cumulative effect. It's not like every sitting has to be rainbows and unicorns. It's really cumulative. But sometimes it's important to get more space in our meditation. And that's where for me, it's so important to take my meditation to nature, to sort of just find some woods, walk in those woods. I find that as I'm among the sort of big trees that are so old and their greenery and all the little animals I see, that suddenly I become a part of them. It's not so much Hayun and her worries. It's more about like our inner connection. And so just the space of it creates this sense of peace, that you can create a big energy in a big space that sometimes you can't in a littler space. So that's number one, is meditation, not always sitting. You can take it on the road. and it can be very valuable. The second example I would say is that's helped me is a metta meditation. So this is not necessarily a guided meditation where you're listening to something, but you're actually guiding yourself. And it's almost that image of, rather than the negativity taking grip of you, that you're sort of pushing back and radiating this sort of kindness to the world. So you're creating this almost a force field around yourself. I found a really nice one that I've been working with from a Zen teacher in Oakland named Larry Yang. And I feel it's very prescient in this moment. So I thought I would share it with you now. And so I'd ask you to compose yourself, hands in hapchang, and we'll do this together with the bell. Just repeat after me. May I be loving, open, and aware in this moment.
May I be open, loving, and aware at this moment.
If I cannot be loving, open, and aware in this moment,
If I cannot be open, loving, and aware in this moment,
may I be kind.
May
I be kind.
If I cannot be kind, may I be non-judgmental.
If I cannot be kind, may I be non-judgmental.
If I cannot be non-judgmental, may I not cause harm.
If I cannot be non-judgmental, may I not cause harm.
If I cannot not cause harm, may I cause the least harm possible.
If
I cannot not cause harm, may I cause
The least harm possible. So that's one example of a metta meditation. There are many more, but you can sort of see that it's sort of radiating kindness through the world as a way to sort of dispel darkness in the world, but also to dispel it in your own heart. The next way I want to talk about is something I learned about when I first came to the temple. And it's one real strategy that I have found personally extremely helpful to dispel these notions of restlessness and worry. And that is what we in our Korean tradition call bulsa. Bulsa means handwork. When I first came to the temple, when Haji Sunim was talking about bulsa, Haru and I looked at each other, and afterwards we said, oh my, we're going to have to be doing sewing a lot. But I realized quickly that it's not just sewing, that sewing can be an amazing part of it, for those who really sew well. But for those of us like me who have 10 thumbs, it's not exactly the ideal work. But the point of it is that your mind, your heart, your eyes, and your hands all come together in your practice. I'll give you some examples. Lauren Bondurant, who's a member of our temple, does exquisite calligraphy, and he's been doing it for many years, and he says that this is his practice, his main practice. It's just working on those lines. As we speak, Brother Fatfu is downstairs. he's decided to reacquaint himself with his old passion of drawing with pens and charcoal, and so he's got these cones and cylinders and stuff, and it's just amazing work. But it's an example of him working with his practice for his mind, his heart, his eyes, and his hands. I brought this big ball here as a prop. This is something that our priest in the Toronto temple, Sanha Sunam, created just out of scrap fabric and old meditation cushions that could no longer be used. And it's just an exquisite example of what someone created. But not everything has to be beautiful or exquisite. Another example is Nojak with his banjo. Nojak's learning the banjo. He's, in my mind, he's awesome, but in his mind, he's probably not. Tongsan and Wancho make it through their food preparation. They put themselves into it. For me, it's really about these little tiny squares of glass that somehow have captured my heart in mosaic work, and doing something not only for myself, but for the temple and those who I love, make it even more special. So it's easy to throw this work aside and say, oh, I don't have the time. This is really just crafts work. But when you look at it much more deeply, you can see how you immerse yourself in something that your mind is really focused, and it's not like being swept away in that restlessness and worry train. The final strategy that I have found to be really helpful is chanting practice. So I think if you looked at it in modern terms, we would probably call it sound practice. There's like volumes of science about the value of meditation, but there's a growing body of evidence about the value of this sound practice, where we actually experience it through our entire bodies. I did this experiment about 6 months ago where I have to drive a lot. And so I looked at my body and how it reacted when I was listening to NPR, which I love. I don't have anything against NPR, but I was kind of agitated and restless when I got out of my car. And then the next morning, when I had to get in my car, I just chanted something simple. And I looked at my body when I came out of the car. I sort of examined my internal nervous system and all, and I could see how uplifted I was just by that simple act of sound practice, and how it just struck me that it could be very powerful. So to end, I want to finish with just a little sound practice, chanting, and ask you to join with me. This is something that all of you know, or almost all of you. It's Ma'um, and it doesn't matter how complicated or simple a chant is. What matters is what's going on in your mind and heart. And I specifically like Ma'um chanting. Not only is it the name of our priest, Ma'um, but I also like it because it talks about our mind and our heart coming together. And that should be the spirit. And so before we start, I want to say what I say at Peace Camp when we start chanting, and that is that you have to put away your sense of your voice not being good enough, or that you're embarrassed, because really no one's even listening to you now. And even if we were all here together, we would not care, because it would be that chorus, because the more voices, the better, and the more out of tune voices, the better. So let's do Ma'um together, and I ask you to really articulate, opening your mouth, feeling this chant not only in your head, but throughout your nervous system, throughout your body, down to your toes, your fingers, through your blood vessels, close your eyes and really make it a part of you as we do it together. So let's put our hands in Hapchang again. Put ourselves in a composed measure. We'll start. Ma 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 Very quietly. I go back to the story that the Shaolin monk told of the man at the base of the mountain. I intend to get up that mountain, and I intend to meet you there. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. So now our own Ma'um has announcements.
Good morning. It's nice to see Spencer helping us and giving us a thumbs up, letting us know when we're ready to be on camera. So thank you for that inspiring talk on the Five Hindrances and working with the 5 hindrances. So the temple is here for you as you work with your restlessness and worry and other hindrances. If you enjoyed the chanting that we were just doing, go to our website, zenbuddhisttemple.org, and there's a whole section on chanting, and you can chant along with Ma'um and other things. If you want some sort of immediate follow-up to this Dharma Talk, this time together, please join the tea time hosted by our Dharma guardian Tongsa and our Dharma teacher Kusa from Colorado Springs. And the link to that tea time meeting is found either on Facebook or in our e-bulletin. For those who are working with addictions, we have a wonderful recovery Dharma program, and that group will be meeting at noon. And I believe the link to that is also on Facebook or in our e-bulletin. Continue to connect with the temple, coming for that Pulsa practice, that manual work practice, every Saturday from 9 to noon. You can come and do work for the temple. Yesterday, we were spraying, power washing the deck in getting ready to seal coat it with paint. And Ursula, who was here for a retreat, cleaned out our entire venting system for the dryer, making the temple much more safe. So there's plenty of opportunities like that for work practice. Contact the temple if you would like to join us one Saturday from 9 to noon. Every morning, most mornings of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, we have meditation at Burns Park at 6:15 a.m. And our group has been growing. We've had about 10 people lately. We hope to see more of you come and join us for that early morning practice. And then Wednesday evening, we also offer member sitting meditation practice in our Sangha house outside on the deck. We do a little practice and chanting together on Wednesday evenings, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Fall is upon us, and we have some new Dharma offerings upcoming that are pretty exciting. Beginning September 10th, there will be a 4 Thursday evening meditation class from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. This class is designed for people of all levels of ability. You will need no special equipment in your home. You won't need fancy mats and cushions or anything like that, but rather it's a chance for us to be together and to deepen our meditation practice. And then finally, we have our training programs beginning on September 4th and 5th. So for those who wish really very in-depth Dharma offerings, it's a pretty big commitment. Probably it's going to take maybe 10 extra hours out of your week if you join these programs, but I think it is very well worth it. Again, contact the temple if you're interested in finding out more about these particular programs. I think those are the announcements. Have I missed anything? Oh, yes, my goodness. Haji Sunim said, thank you. And we are so grateful for your continued engagement and support of our temple, of our Sangha, financial donations, also vegetables, time, all of these things, just giving us your hearts and minds and being part of our community. So Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the
But
day.
before we end,
Oh, one more thing.
one more thing. Since we have Spencer, we're so fortunate. I'm wondering if you could move the camera to Haji Sunan to lead us in the 4 great vows.
Oh,
Of
course I will.
Yes.
These are so vast and all-encompassing. So when we say them, we realize that it's really about our work in each very moment. Now, and now, and now. So please repeat after me. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
Next, before we get cut off, we're going to do some repairs in the garden because some animals have been devastating the kale in particular. What are you about to do? Have a very good day.